15 years in, and the DC SEU is still at it. Still helping DC save money, reduce energy use, and build a cleaner, more affordable future. Together. Did you know they've invested $120 million in low-income communities? They put $99 million in DC-based businesses, too. And they have turned out over 300 graduates trained for the new green workforce. That is economic mobility, y'all. And that is what it's all about. Still here, still redefining power in the district. Find out more at dcseu.com.
Today on CityCast DC, to get public housing in DC, you need to cough up a lot of data about yourself, which makes it a particular problem when the Public Housing Authority gets hacked, and an even bigger problem when they don't exactly tell everyone about it. Reporter Suzie Amanuel has been covering the story. She is here to explain. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC's talking about. Suzie, welcome.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So you wrote a real banger of a story, or a series of stories, for City Paper about a saga that I think more people should know about. What exactly is happening at the DC Housing Authority?
So what happened is about 2 weeks ago, DCHA disclosed that they had what they called a system interruption due to a cybersecurity incident.
That sounds awfully antiseptic. Is there a more direct human way of saying that?
So they didn't phrase it this way, but, most people might be like, what does that mean? Is that a cyber attack? Did hackers get in the system? And so those are kind of the things I was wondering, like, what is, system interruption, cybersecurity incident? What does that mean? So I, end up getting a screenshot of what was actually on DCHA's computers at the time, what the employees saw. And, DCHA has not confirmed that this message was real, but they haven't said anything about it when I asked. But it was basically a ransomware message that said, hey, we got into your systems, we have your data, we have encrypted it, we have taken it, and you have 72 hours to negotiate with us, or we're going to leak it on the internet.
Holy moly. Wait, what kind of data did they have access to?
So, we still don't know. I can tell you generally what kind of data DCHA has. DCHA has a ton of information about voucher holders, tenants in public housing, applicants, and it runs a gamut from your personal data, your social security number, your financial information, the kids in your household. It's a vast amount of data that DCHA has, and other agencies also, health-related data, which is, also very scary for somebody to get your medical information.
And do people know that they've been hacked?
So for the past 2 weeks, there wasn't really, DCHA said they're investigating, which is, very normal when this happens. They according to the experts I spoke to, they did everything right. They shut down their systems, they got cybersecurity experts, they started an investigation, law enforcement is involved. So during that time, it hasn't been a lot of information about what if anything has been compromised until Friday at around 8 p.m. They said some data has been compromised, but we still don't exactly know what it is. They just said it's like a limited amount of data, but they did offer free credit monitoring and identity theft protection assistance, which is pretty standard when there is a breach of personal information.
But as far as we know, they didn't reach out to individual people saying like, hey, Suzie, your X, Y, and Z were taken.
Not yet, but that's not unusual. Often it takes time to fully investigate. One of the housing agencies that I included in one of my articles that had a similar, that was also hacked by, cyber criminals, was the LA Housing Authority. And they took about 3 months to actually tell people, hey, we finished our investigation and our data's been compromised.
But wait, in the meantime, the screenshot that someone sent you said, if you don't negotiate within 72 hours, we're going to leak this. 72 hours have gone by. What happened? Did the DC Housing Authority, investigate, pay the ransom? What did they do?
So that we don't know. But I asked the cybersecurity expert. So when hackers say, hey, we have your data, we're going to release it, do they really have the data? Is it, are they bluffing? And he said, it's about 50-50. Sometimes they're bluffing and don't even have anything, and sometimes they do and they'll release it. So that's what a cybersecurity firm gets involved, because they also negotiate with the hackers.
What is the mood like among residents, people who may have been the victims of this?
So, I listened in on a DCHA board hearing last week. And, one of the questions is, has my data been compromised? Is my personal information out there? And, for people who are dealing with housing authorities, breaches happen every single day, I would say. I mean, they are so common. But it's a little different for people who are engaging with the housing authority, because if I shop online at Amazon and my data gets hacked, I made a choice to, I'm still a victim, but I made a choice to engage with this business. People who are getting assistance from public housing, they don't really have a choice. They have to hand over all of this data in order to get benefits. And so this is something that I've heard from voucher holders even before any data breach happens, that just look at all this information I have to give the housing authority, I have to give my landlord. And, there's a lot of nervousness around having to share so much information.
Okay, explain this from the criminal's point of view. What is the hacker expecting to get out of this? I mean, they're taking data that is, by definition, data of some of the most vulnerable people in society, and people who probably do not themselves personally have the ability to pay much ransom. What are they trying to, what can they expect to get if they sort of get away with it? Perfect crime.
Sometimes companies or agencies may pay the ransom, right? So it'll be money, but even if they don't, you have all of these people's personal information, and that is identity theft. You can sell that information to identity thieves. So it could be lucrative in many ways.
Does DC have a blanket policy? We don't pay ransom, or we do, or what?
That I don't know. Cybersecurity insurance will sometimes pay that, but I have not gotten much. I asked the question, do you have cybersecurity insurance? Didn't get an answer, but they did disclose at the board hearing that they do have cybersecurity insurance. So depending on what the insurance is, maybe it'll pay. It's not very publicly discussed whether ransoms are paid, because you also don't want to encourage more hackers if they think it's like a successful business plan.
You already know DC is more than just the nation's capital. We gave America the football huddle, the blood bank, and go-go music. You're welcome, everyone. Our influence is everywhere, and now it's also on display at District 5's American Pride, a free exhibit at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, running now through September 27th. It tells the story of how district residents like Chuck Brown, Dr. Charles Drew, and Carter G. Woodson shaped the culture of our entire country. I actually had a chance to see it recently, and I don't think I've ever been more stunned nor more blown away by a single exhibit. And I remember this feeling of swelling up with pride for my city, just taking it all in. You get to stand in front of original works by DC artists, see the iconic Nixon Resigns, a Washington Post front page, and my favorite part, play a jukebox loaded with the sounds that this city invented. So plan your visit at dclibrary.org. That's dclibrary.org. Your library, your city, America's story.
So the DC auditor, Kathy Patterson, released a pretty scathing report about DCHA itself, the housing authority, saying they don't know where any of DCHA's money is or how much it has. How does the cyber attack affect this or intersect with that set of conclusions?
So there was a company hired to audit their systems, I believe last year or 2024. It was in one of the performance oversight responses where, they said there are vulnerabilities to their systems. They were going to hire cybersecurity experts to help with that, but it's just not clear if that happened. And the agency in the most recent performance oversight answer said that they were working on it in 2025, but it's not clear if that happened. I asked about that.
I think a lot of people might put two and two together and say, if they have sort of some basic boo-boos around basic financial controls, maybe they're not that good at cybersecurity either. Is there any evidence that DCHA did anything wrong that another housing agency might not have done, that there was something sort of less professional about their security that enabled this to happen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, DCHA has said they had all the standard protocols in place. If something was missed, we will find out as the investigation continues or concludes. But, from what I'm seeing and have been told, this is very common. Housing agencies get attacked all the time. It's unfortunate, but it happens, and you could do everything right and still be victimized. So it's too early to know if something, was missed.
So what's the future of this? Is this is this still a sort of data hostage situation, or have we moved past that and they're just trying to figure out how much damage was done and how to mitigate it?
Yeah, I think we'll know more when the investigation is concluded. Now we're just getting bits and pieces. DCHA has said that they will, keep everybody informed as they learn more, and possibly the investigation will be concluded in a few weeks. So at that point...
Suzie, do you believe them? I mean, they've certainly not kept you well informed, and you had to, they've sent out this opaque statement in the first place about an incident, and it was only because you had a good source who was able to send you a screenshot that you found out it was something, a lot more troubling. Do they have credibility? Like there's members of the council that kind of ride herd on them. Do you get the sense that people who are in an oversight capacity believe them?
That I'm not sure about that. The thing is, I've written a lot about DCHA and some of their failures and problems, right? But in this case, I think you could do everything right and still suffer a data breach. But we can find out later. The DC Health Exchange had a data breach a few years ago, right? And that breach happened because there was an unsecured server and hackers got in and took that data. So, if something like that is, we would look at it and be like, well, you didn't have proper security on your data. So if that comes out after the investigation, we can say that about DCHA. But right now, we just don't know.
Suzie, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.